Hey, welcome to JUCK on Bucks. Appreciate you so much for joining me on an abbreviated weekend show. I got a wedding, guys. I got a wedding to go to today. Cousin Danny getting married. Shout out Cousin Danny. He's a JUCK guy, so we're gonna have a lot of fun with that. And you've seen me plenty this week, so you don't mind an abbreviated show. I think I did 5 JUCK on Bucks and 3 JUCK on CFBs this week. If you're not subscribed over there, you should. It's national college football stuff, but a lot of times it affects the Buckeyes, and we're actually going to be hitting off a couple of topics that I talked about over there because a few of them affect the Buckeyes on today's update. But last night I was talking about the Ohio State quarterback, not the Ohio State quarterback situation, but the quarterback situation in 2026, which does involve Ohio State, as Ohio State does not have a quarterback in 2026. You started off looking really strong with the number 1 quarterback, Jared Curtis, out of Nashville, and that was a recruitment that was led by Corey Dennis. Well, Corey Dennis ends up leaving, and when he leaves, things go south with Jared Curtis. Now, in 2026, you're looking for a quarterback who wants to be sandwiched in between Julian Sayin in 24, Tavian St. Clair in 25, and Brady Edmonds now in 2027. All those 3 guys were all number 2 in their class. So super highly ranked 5-star quarterbacks, and that's what you're asking someone to be involved in when they come into the Ohio State quarterback room in 2026. And it's just a loaded room. It's a loaded room, and it's a tough ask. And you may have to pivot off of what you would normally do, which is go get a top 10, top 15 guy. So you were in on Jared Curtis. He ends up committing to Georgia, and he commits to Georgia. So you're out on him. You go kick the tires on some other guys. Faison Brandon out of North Carolina, who looks like Vince Young. Dia Bell out of Brandon Innes' high school, Heritage in Florida. And he actually grew up in Ohio. He looked really good, and that was looking really promising. And then he ends up committing to Texas, Will Griffin, Jonas Williams, and they kind of settle on Jonas Williams as he was maybe like the last of the top 10 who was not committed. So they're going pretty hard after Jonas Williams out of Illinois. And he's down to, I think it was Texas, Oregon, and Ohio State, or maybe Texas A&M, Oregon, Ohio State. At any rate, he chooses Oregon. So Oregon gets Jonas Williams, and the Buckeyes are sitting there. They got nobody. Then Jared Curtis decommits from Georgia. In one of the cooler decommitment statements I've ever heard, he says that he's decommitting from Georgia, not because he doesn't want to go to Georgia, but because he wants to visit other schools, and it just feels kind of gross to him to be committed to Georgia while taking visits to other schools. Shout out Jared Curtis. I like that kid a lot. So Billy Fessler goes and visits him. Chip Kelly goes and visits him. Looks like the Buckeyes are making some headway. Now, out at USC, they've got no quarterback in 26, and they're trying hard to flip Jonas Williams from Oregon, and they successfully do it yesterday as Jonas Williams flips out of Oregon to USC, one of Lincoln Riley's few wins against the Ducks recently. Jonas Williams cited as flipping to USC as Lincoln Riley's great, and one of the reasons that he did it was the class of 2025 being really exciting. USC finished 15th in that class. So I don't know if he's following recruiting rankings like we are. But the really interesting thing about USC and the way Lincoln Riley's recruiting, and it's been bad, guys. We're talking like 9th his first class, then 15th, then 17th. And now we're talking about trying to rebuild things in the class of 2026. Looking pretty good so far, the number 2 class right now. But Notre Dame had the number 1 class forever last year, and they finished 15th. But the interesting thing about Riley is this guy's got like an aversion to California players. It is strange. His first class at USC had 12, then 7. Then last year in a class of 24 kids, he had just 5 players from California, which is absurd. Oregon has more California kids coming in than USC does, and Oregon's are better. So Jonas Williams now going to USC. And Jared Curtis, now with the opening in Oregon, he was already, making good headway there. He has cut it down to a list of 2, and the Buckeyes are out. He is now Georgia or Oregon. I think he's going to end up at Oregon. And that leaves the Buckeyes still without a quarterback in this class, which again, it's not really a big deal. You can get, whatever kind of developmental guy you want, because you're not going to get a big dog in the class. And you've got the 15th ranked quarterback who a lot of people are really high on, Matt Panetoski out of Cincinnati. He is a baseball player who may get drafted really high, so he may not even play college football. Then you got Nathan Barnhart out of Ashland, 6'6", 230 with a cannon. I think he's the perfect fit to stick in between a bunch of blue chips. An Ohio kid who might stick around and look at, okay, I'm on the 3 or 4 year plan. I love it. So I hope that they offer him. I hope that's the way they go. But that's where we stand at quarterback in 2026. Now let's go to offensive line in 2026. As my favorite new coach at my favorite position, Tyler Bowen. We talked about Tyler Bowen and his first offer as the offensive line coach at Ohio State to Evan Goodwin. And we talked about all the guys that he's already contacted since he's been here. I talked about all the offers we're about to see as he's going to bring in the proper modern recruiting approach to Ohio State and in the proper recruiting strategy. And since we did that show, that was yesterday's show, we talked about that. 3 new offers since yesterday's show. I watched all their film. Let's talk about them. We start with, let me pull our guy up here, Kevin Obot. We'll call him Kevin the Robot. He's 6'5", 265 out of Fruitland, Idaho. And this dude is a robot. He's a freak athlete, the number 12 tackle in the country. I think that when we talk about who could be ready fastest out of these 3 offers that just went out, he's definitely the dude. Really, really like him. And again, a dude not from down south. I'm sick of fighting these battles down south. It's like a waste of time. Then you've got 4-star Claude Mapalma out of Chicago, 6'7", 308. This kid is the 16th ranked tackle in the country, and he is newer to football. I think he's from Nigeria. So he's newer to football. It shows. He looks like a baby deer out there. He doesn't fire off the ball. He stands straight up. Ultimate project, but he looks like a really good athlete for a guy that size. And then we go to the dude, Deacon Schmidt. Deacon Schmidt, 6'5", 310, barely a 4-star at 386 in the country, the number 32 offensive lineman. And guys, I've got to show you Deacon Schmidt out of Colorado because I started this film and I wanted to record the first play just to show you guys. Not a super athletic kid. But the first play of this cut up, I was like, oh, I gotta play this on the show. And then as I'm watching, every single one is like this. Every single one. Nasty, gritty. He clearly loves football. And this is the kind of guy you just love to have in your program. Take a look at Deacon Schmidt. And again, I don't usually play offensive line clips because most people don't want to watch them. But when I watched that, I was like, I got to play this. And then as it kept going, every single play was like that. And I fell in love. This is my guy. This is absolutely my guy. We got to get Deacon Schmidt in here. Deacon was ecstatic to get this offer from Ohio State. So now Tyler Bowen is offered Evan Goodwin from Arkansas. And then you got the 3 northern guys, Chicago, Colorado, Idaho, which I really like. Tired of fighting these battles down south for guys that are the same caliber of these dudes, mid-range 4-stars or high-range 4-stars. We've got them up here. You don't need to go down there to get them. Why would you if you don't need to? Go take your swing at the high-level 5-star, which Tyler Bowen is still doing. He's contacted Jackson Cantwell. And then for your high-range 4-stars to mid-4-stars to 3-stars, they're all up here. Don't waste your time. So I love it. I love what he's doing. When we talk about Deacon Schmidt, he's already got a good relationship with Charlie Dickey from when Charlie Dickey was in the Big 12, recruiting him. And the kid's so stoked to get an Ohio State offer. So really like these guys. You got a really good, super athletic project in Claude Mapalma. You got Kevin the Robot. He is, plug and play in 2 years. Like this dude just needs to bulk up. He's got it all. And then you got our man Deacon, and Deacon is the Deacon. So the second thing I wanted to talk about today, when we look at Ohio State's schedule a couple years out, number one, it's incredibly exciting. Let me pull it up here. So here's just big games. I got 25, 26. If you go out to, 25 and 26, obviously we know we got Texas out of the SEC. Then we go to 27 and 28. 27, we got a home game against Alabama. 28, we go to Alabama. Kick it out to 2030, 2031. You got Georgia at Georgia to start, and then home against Georgia. And I mean, there is nothing that makes me happier than seeing those games scheduled. Will we see them? Yesterday, news broke that Matt Rule, the Nebraska coach and athletic director at Nebraska, Troy Dannon, were after canceling the spring game, 10 days after that, they are canceling a home and home with Tennessee. And these games were to take place in 26 and 27, which in scheduling is like canceling a game that's being played tomorrow. And Danny White, the Tennessee athletic director, is obviously furious. You totally screwed him. And now Tennessee is going to be stuck playing cream puffs, as will Nebraska, but that's exactly what they wanted. Nebraska fans are furious. I went on the Nebraska board just to kind of gauge the feel of what they're thinking. So stupid. I really hope we aren't moving towards a format where every Big Ten and SEC team plays just cupcakes in the non-con. Terrible for the sport. Could not agree more. I'm sorry, but this is a chicken bleep move by the Huskers. We have enough of an image problem as it is. Now we look scared. This is a really bad look for Nebraska. This sucks. This is embarrassing, pretty much revoking our own blue blood status. There is no way to spin this. We aren't a blue blood anymore. This is pretty lame and tells us prepare for infinite mediocrity. No reason to do this with 4 Big Ten teams guaranteed spots in the playoffs. Now, he makes a good point there, but we don't know for sure if we're going to auto bids yet or not. But if we are going to auto bids, there really is very little downside if you're in a 14-team playoff to play out of conference games, because if you lose them, it doesn't count against your conference record. If you win them, it could help you if you end up going to a 16-team playoff and there are 3 at-large bids. As it stands right now, if Notre Dame has a decent season, they're going to get that at-large bid because all the other teams that are in their stratosphere are going to make that automatic qualifier in their conference. So if you go to 16, the out-of-conference games can help you. As it currently stands, if you have automatic qualifiers, they can't help you at all, but they can't hurt you at all. So why would you play them? That's pretty much Matt Rule's philosophy. Exactly what he said about the spring game. Never mind the fans, never mind the Tennessee fans, never mind that he's screwing over Tennessee, AD, Danny White. He doesn't care. He wants the easiest possible path to the playoff. And the penalty for canceling this was only $1 million to get out of the game. The reason I'm bringing it up here at JUCK on Bucks is not only is it an interesting story that irritates me, but when we saw Matt Rule come out and cancel the spring game, it was very clear to me that everybody else who did that was waiting on one to go. They were waiting on one to jump. Matt Rule jumped. You saw Ryan Day jump immediately. Ohio State cancels their spring game. Then you saw USC the next day. Then you saw Texas the very next day. And it concerns me about these out-of-conference games because I love them. Now, athletic director Ross Stewart came out and talked about this last week, and he said, we want to play these big out-of-conference games because fans want them. It brings in revenue, and especially now that we're sharing revenue with the players deserve that content to be out there, which I thought was an interesting way to phrase that because the players aren't getting more revenue if Ohio State brings in more revenue. They're getting a cut, but it's a set cut. This isn't like going up that year because you brought in more that year. At any rate, he wants to make more money, and that's a plus. But it also goes against what his coach may want if his coach wants an easy out-of-conference schedule. And when you look at Ohio State and Texas this year, like how exciting that's going to be in 2025. Like these games, just imagine Bama coming into the shoe. Like I live for this stuff, man. And I know some of you guys want I've talked to you about it before, the easiest possible way to make it into the playoffs. It's just a matter of priorities for me. Like my priorities first and foremost are playing the most fun games we can play because that's what I love about college football. And if we have automatic qualifiers, 4 of them in the Big Ten, if Ohio State can't make that playoff playing one big out-of-conference game like we pretty much have for the last 20 years, then it's not an Ohio State team that's good enough to win the playoff anyway. So I don't really care. I want to play the big out-of-conference game. But we all know that Ohio State in most years, if there are 4 automatic bids for the Big Ten, could play anybody's schedule in the country and still make it into the top 4 of the Big Ten. The only downside of potentially playing that in this particular case to me is the extra beating you take on your body. But if you're playing it the first game of the week, you've got a couple cream puffs surrounding it anyway. Matt Rule in Nebraska and AD Troy Dannon, they want to play an extra cream puff. They're spinning it that they really are doing a renovation of the stadium. and it's going to cut down some of the capacity on the stadium. And they want to make up some more of that money. So they're going to add an extra home game and not play Tennessee. That's how they're spinning this whole thing. And they're going to now add an 8th home game. You play 12 games. They're going to have 8 home games in 2027, which is just like, you got 8 home games. 3 of them are cream puffs. I can't wait to see what this schedule looks like for Nebraska in 2027. And this is an issue with AQs, man. This is an issue. Nebraska scheduling themselves 8 home games, 3 cream puffs. What if they get a lucky draw for an easy Big Ten schedule? Like, how's that going to look? You know? And when we look at the new conference championship thing that's being brought out, and a lot of people are talking, this is really gaining steam. So the new conference championship setup, you would take, and we'll just go by last year in the Big Ten, say Oregon and Penn State. They're number 1 and number 2. We all know that this conference championship game does not fit in this current model. So as a way to change it, this proposal is number 1 and number 2. They're going to play for the conference championship, but they're both already in the playoffs. Okay, so Penn State and Oregon, they play for the championship. They're already in. Then you take seeds number 3, 4, 5, and 6 in the Big Ten, and number 3, 4, 5, and 6, 3 and 6 play for an opportunity to make it to the championship or to the playoffs, and then 4 and 5 play for an opportunity to make it to the playoffs. And that's your 4 teams: Oregon, Penn State, and the winner of those 2 games. And that sounds like an incredibly fun weekend, doesn't it? It sure does. But there is something that you really give up. You really give up a big part of the back end of the regular season. Because when we look at who the teams we were looking at down the stretch last year, we were looking at teams that were on the bubble to make the playoffs. We were looking at Alabama, and we're excited to watch USC and SMU and Clemson and Iowa State and these teams that have had good seasons, but are they good enough? Miami, are they good enough to make it into the playoffs? Who's going to make it? Like, that is where all the excitement was. In the AQ system, for AQs, it takes away a bit of that. But if you go down to the 6th seed, now all those teams are already in. They're already in the top 6 of their conference. So we know that they're playing. We know they're advancing. So we're now looking at teams 5, 6, 7, and 8 in each conference who are fighting for that bid to play on. Do you want the last 5, 6 games of the season to be consumed with us talking about everybody's already in? Like, we're talking about Iowa, Minnesota, Michigan in a horrifically bad season. Who's going to make it in? Like, that's where the conversation's at. That, to me, takes away way too much of the excitement of the regular season when you go down to the 6th place team is essentially playing a postseason game. That's what it is. It's a postseason game. Do you think a 7-5 Michigan team deserves the opportunity to win 1 game and be in the playoffs? Because that's what they would get in this system. That 7-5 Michigan team, win 1 game and you're now in the playoffs. Miss me with that one. Anyway, that's our weekend update. Appreciate you guys so much. I'll talk to you soon. JUCK on Bucks out.